You know that feeling when someone asks you to share more about your life? Post a photo, tell them what you've been up to, and instead of excitement, you feel exhaustion. Not because you're hiding, not because you're ashamed, but because your life is yours. And sharing it feels like giving away something you need to keep. There are people who've spent decades learning this the hard way. They tried to be open, to perform, to share their days like everyone else. And slowly, they realized the more they shared, the less peace they had. So they stopped, not out of fear, out of wisdom. They became what the world calls private people. But here's what most people miss. This isn't about being antisocial or broken. It's about understanding something the Stoics called sovereignty over your own peace. That privacy isn't isolation, it's protection, it's freedom. It's what Seneca meant when he said, "A private life is the ultimate luxury." And once you understand why, you'll never see yourself the same way again. Let me explain what's actually happening here. When someone chooses to keep their life private, to share nothing about their days, their thoughts, their inner world, the world assumes something is wrong. They must be insecure, they must be hiding, they must be afraid of judgment or connection or being seen. But what if that's not it at all? What if the reason they share nothing isn't because they're broken, but because they've already found something most people spend their entire lives searching for? Self-worth that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. A sense of identity that doesn't need to be performed or validated or reflected back through a screen. Think about it. If you already feel good about yourself, why would you need strangers to confirm it? If your identity is solid, why would you need to broadcast it? If your life feels full, why would you need to prove it to people who weren't there? These people aren't hiding, they're living. And there's a massive difference between the two. They've learned that sharing everything doesn't create connection, it creates noise, it invites judgment, it opens the door to opinions they never asked for, advice they don't need, and energy they can't afford to lose. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's sovereignty. And once you see it that way, everything shifts. But here's the interesting part. It wasn't always this way for them. I remember someone telling me once, years ago, that they used to post everything. Every meal, every trip, every thought that crossed their mind. They thought that's what connection looked like. That sharing was how you stayed close to people, how you proved you were living a full life, how you reminded the world you existed. But slowly, something changed. The more they shared, the more exposed they felt. The more they posted, the more they noticed how people responded. Not with genuine care, but with quick reactions. A like, a comment that felt hollow, a judgment wrapped in a compliment. And they realized, this isn't connection, this is performance. So they stopped, not dramatically, not with an announcement. They just quietly stepped back. And what they found in that silence was something they hadn't felt in years. Peace, clarity, freedom. I remember the exact moment it clicked for me. I was sitting at my kitchen table, phone in hand, about to post a photo of something simple, a cup of coffee, a quiet morning, and I paused. Not because the moment wasn't beautiful, but because I realized sharing it would change it. It would turn something private and sacred into something public and performed. And I didn't want that. I wanted to keep it, to let it be mine, just mine, without needing anyone else to validate that it mattered. So I put the phone down, and I just sat there, in the silence, in the stillness. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe without an audience watching. They realized their life didn't need an audience to have meaning. Their joy didn't need validation to be real. Their struggles didn't need to be shared to be valid. And for the first time in decades, they felt like they could breathe. That shift, that quiet reclaiming of their own life, wasn't a flaw. It was wisdom. It was understanding that privacy isn't about shutting people out. It's about protecting what matters. It's about choosing who gets access to your energy, your story, your inner world. And that choice, that's power. Sharing nothing is also a way of living. A deliberate, intentional way of saying, my life is mine, and I don't owe anyone a window into it. Still, here's a curiosity. Why do some people feel this way so deeply, while others can't imagine living without sharing every detail? There's a psychology behind this that most people never understand. It has to do with how certain people process the world. They're not just private by habit, they're private by design. Their minds work differently. They have what psychologists call high internal self-presence, a rich, complex inner life that doesn't need external validation to feel real. For most people, sharing is how they process. They talk through their feelings, post about their day, tell stories to make sense of what happened. But for private people, processing happens internally. They think, they reflect, they sit with their emotions in silence. And by the time they've worked through something, there's nothing left to share. The work is done, the meaning is found, and broadcasting it feels unnecessary, even invasive. After decades of trying to enjoy crowded rooms, loud conversations, and constant social performance, they've learned something crucial. Their energy is finite, and every time they share something personal, every time they open up to someone who doesn't truly care, every time they perform for an audience that isn't really listening, they lose a piece of that energy. So they stopped giving it away, not because they're cold or distant or broken, but because they've learned to value their peace more than they value being understood by people who were never going to understand them anyway. And here's what the world gets wrong. They think privacy equals loneliness. But for these people, privacy is the opposite. It's sanctuary. It's the place where they finally feel safe, seen by themselves, and free from the exhausting chore of explaining who they are to people who weren't asking out of genuine care. If you are someone who shares nothing, who keeps your life close, who feels relief when you don't have to explain yourself, you're not missing out. You're protecting something most people never learn to protect. Your peace, your energy, your right to exist without needing to prove it. Let me shift for a moment and speak directly to you. Not about you, to you. What if nothing is wrong? What if the reason you don't post, don't share, don't feel the need to broadcast your life isn't because you're insecure or hiding or broken, but because you've already found something most people are still desperately searching for? What if you've learned that your worth doesn't come from how many people see you, but from how deeply you see yourself? What if you've realized that sharing everything doesn't create connection, it creates noise? What if you've discovered that the most meaningful parts of your life are the ones you keep sacred, protected, yours? I spent years thinking I was broken. I'd watch people around me laugh in groups, make plans, text constantly, post photos, share stories, and I'd wonder, why don't I want that? Why does the idea of sharing my day feel exhausting instead of exciting? Why do I feel more at peace when I'm alone, unseen, unbothered? And then I realized something. Solitude isn't a lack of connection. It's a different kind of connection, a deeper one, a connection with yourself that doesn't need an audience to be real. Seneca understood this. He wrote about the importance of withdrawing from the noise of the world, not to escape life, but to live it more fully. To reclaim your mind, your time, your energy from the endless demands of a world that wants you to perform constantly. Privacy, he believed, wasn't isolation. It was sovereignty. It was the ultimate luxury in a world that constantly tries to take pieces of you. And once you understand that, once you see your silence not as a flaw, but as a form of freedom, everything about how you live starts to make sense. At 50, 60, 70, you've earned the right to choose peace. You've spent decades trying to fit in, trying to be who people expected you to be, trying to share and connect in ways that drained you. And now, finally, you've stopped. Not because you gave up, but because you woke up. And now it's time to talk directly to you. Maybe you are one of these people. Maybe you've spent years feeling like something was wrong with you because you don't post photos, don't share updates, don't feel the need to broadcast your life to the world. Maybe you've been told you're too private, too distant, too hard to know. And maybe, deep down, you've started to believe it. But here's the truth. It doesn't mean you never get lonely. It doesn't mean you don't crave connection. It just means you've learned the difference between connection that nourishes you and connection that drains you. You've learned that solitude is chosen, loneliness is not. And you've chosen solitude because it's where you finally feel like yourself. Think about the last time you were truly alone. Not lonely, alone. Maybe it was a Sunday morning, the house quiet, the world still asleep. You made coffee. You sat by the window. You watched the light change. And you felt something you rarely feel in crowded rooms. Presence. Not the performance of presence, but the real thing. The kind that doesn't need witnesses to be valid. That's the difference. Loneliness is the ache of wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is the peace of having yourself and not needing more. And after decades of confusing the two, of forcing yourself into rooms that drained you, of trying to fill a void that was never really empty, you finally learned solitude isn't the problem. It's the solution. Your home is your sanctuary. Not because you're hiding from the world, but because it's the one place where you don't have to perform, where you don't have to explain yourself, where you can breathe without feeling like someone is watching, judging, waiting for you to be more than you are. And that's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's knowing yourself well enough to protect what matters. Your peace, your energy, your freedom to exist without needing to prove it. While others fear missing out, you've discovered the joy of opting out. You've learned that saying no to plans, to invitations, to constant social performance isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. It's choosing your own company over half-hearted connections. And that choice, that's strength. There is something important still waiting to be said. Something about why this matters. Why it's not just okay, but necessary. Why the world needs more people like you. Let's go deeper into the psychology. There are specific reasons why some people become intensely private. Why they guard their lives so carefully. Why sharing feels like giving away something they can't afford to lose. First, energy management. After a lifetime of performing socially, of showing up to events that drained them, of making conversation that felt like work, they've learned something crucial. People can drain your energy, not because they're bad people, but because social interaction, for some, is a chore, not a recharge. Every conversation is a performance. Every gathering is a task. And after decades of it, they've simply run out of the energy to keep performing. Picture this. You're at a dinner party. Someone asks you a simple question. What have you been up to? And instead of answering honestly, you calculate, you edit. You perform a version of yourself that's acceptable, interesting, normal. You smile, you nod, you give them what they want. And by the time you get home, you're exhausted. Not from the dinner, from the performance. That's what private people have learned to avoid. Not the dinner, the performance. Not the people, the drain. They've realized that every time they share, every time they open up to someone who's asking out of politeness rather than care, they lose something they can't get back. Energy, peace, a piece of themselves. So they stopped. They started saying no. They started keeping their lives private. Not because they're antisocial, but because they've learned that protecting their energy is the only way to have any left for the things that actually matter. Second, trust and vulnerability. Many private people have learned the hard way that sharing doesn't always lead to connection. Sometimes it leads to judgment. Sometimes it leads to advice they didn't ask for. Sometimes it leads to people using their stories against them, twisting their words, misunderstanding their intentions. And after years of that, they've learned it's safer to share nothing. Not because they don't trust anyone, but because they've learned to be selective, to guard their inner world and only let in the people who've earned the right to be there. And those people, they're rare, so the rest of the world sees silence. But that silence isn't emptiness, it's protection. Third, a complex inner life. Private people often have incredibly rich internal worlds. They think deeply. They feel deeply. They process everything internally before they ever speak it out loud. And by the time they've worked through something, there's nothing left to share. The meaning has been found. The lesson has been learned. And broadcasting it to the world feels unnecessary, even invasive. Seneca wrote extensively about this. He believed that the mind, like the body, needs rest. That constant exposure to the noise of the world, to the opinions of others, to the endless demands for attention and validation, exhausts the soul. He called solitude the ultimate luxury, not because it's rare, but because it's the only place where you can truly think, truly feel, truly be yourself without the weight of performance. For private people, that's not philosophy, it's survival. It's the difference between living a life that's theirs and living a life that's constantly being shaped, judged, and interpreted by people who don't really know them. Privacy isn't about hiding. It's about having a life that belongs to you, not to the world's expectations. Seneca wrote about this. He believed that the mind needs solitude to think clearly, to process deeply, to find meaning in the noise of life. And for private people, that solitude isn't loneliness, it's clarity. It's the space where they finally make sense of the world. Fourth, control over their environment. Private people have learned that the more they share, the less control they have over how they're perceived. Every photo, every post, every detail they share becomes something others can interpret, judge, misunderstand. And after decades of being misunderstood, they've learned it's better to share nothing than to share something that will be twisted into something it's not. So they keep their lives close, they keep their stories private, they keep their peace protected. And that's not a flaw, that's sovereignty. Sometimes the reason they love being private is because the world once disappointed them, because they tried to share, tried to connect, tried to be open, and it didn't go the way they hoped. And instead of trying again and again, they chose something different. They chose to protect their peace. And that's not giving up. That's emotional wisdom. Picture this. You're standing at your window, watching life continue outside. People rushing, talking, performing, sharing, constantly moving. And you're inside, in the quiet, in the stillness, in the comfort of your own company. And you don't feel like you're missing out. You feel like you've found something they're still searching for. The light is soft. The air is still. There's a cup of tea cooling on the table beside you. And in this moment, you're not thinking about what you should post, what you should share, what you should prove. You're just here, present, whole, unbothered by the noise outside. Society glorifies the rush, the constant movement, the endless sharing, as if being seen is the same as being alive. But you've learned something they haven't. That stillness isn't stagnation. That quiet isn't emptiness. That privacy isn't loneliness. It's peace. And peace, real peace, is something most people spend their entire lives chasing without ever finding. Society glorifies constant connection, constant sharing, constant visibility, as if privacy is failure, as if being unseen means you're not living. But here's the truth. Rest is part of growth. Stillness is part of clarity. And privacy is part of living a life that's actually yours. You're not running away from life. You're running toward peace. You're not hiding from connection. You're choosing the kind of connection that doesn't drain you. You're not missing out. You're opting into something deeper, something quieter, something that doesn't need an audience to be real. And that quality, that ability to be happy with your own company, to find meaning in silence, to protect your energy from people who take more than they give, that's called self-companionship. And it's one of the rarest, most valuable things a person can have. You are not strange for sharing nothing. You are not cold for keeping your life private. You are not broken for not needing validation from people who don't truly know you. You are not missing out by choosing peace over performance. You are building a life that doesn't exhaust you. A life that doesn't require you to explain yourself to people who are never really asking. A life that's quiet, simple, and entirely yours. And after decades of trying to be someone you're not, after years of performing for people who didn't care, after a lifetime of feeling like you had to prove your worth, you finally stopped. And that's not giving up. That's waking up. One day, you might share something. Not because you're forced to, but because you choose to. Not because the world demands it, but because it feels right. And when that day comes, it will be on your terms. In your time, with the people who've earned the right to know you. Until then, your silence is enough. Your privacy is enough. Your peace is enough. You are enough. If this resonates with you, if you want to go even deeper into understanding why solitude feels like home and why protecting your energy isn't selfish, there's more waiting for you here. Another conversation, another layer, just for you. This is Alone Together, a quiet corner of the internet for people who choose solitude over half-hearted connections. If you're here, you're not broken, you're just built differently, and you're not alone in being alone.